This happened last month. I'm Alex, 34, a logistics officer stationed at a remote military base in Afghanistan. I was managing supply routes and making sure everyone had what they needed. It was tough being away from home. I just wanted to get through my tour without any issues. The base was just a bunch of tents and temporary buildings, surrounded by these endless sandy mountains. It felt barren and empty, maybe because it was. I thought I could handle it, but then weird things started happening. I've never stopped thinking about it. On my second night, I was trying to sleep when I heard a series of thumps outside my tent. It sounded like something heavy had fallen, but I pretty much brushed it off. Military life had weird noises, right? I hoped it was just some equipment shift or a vehicle getting moved around. So I rolled over and went back to sleep, but it wasn't easy. The next few nights were when things got really strange. The thumps turned into scraping sounds, like metal against the ground, and I could have sworn I heard muffled shouting. Then I thought I heard a child crying too. It felt wrong to be in that desert with these noises looming around me. I went to some of the guys I worked with, trying to explain that I might be hearing things, but they just laughed it off. They said it was my mind playing tricks on me. I wanted to believe them, but something didn't sit right. One night, I stepped out of my tent to get some air. The wind whipped at my face, and it felt colder than it had any other night. I glanced around, trying to figure out where the noises were coming from. I stood there for a while, just listening. I thought I heard a faint sound that made my skin crawl, like when you're not sure you're alone. My heart was racing, and I felt this tightness in my chest. After a week, the noises were a regular part of my nights. The thumps got louder, accompanied by sighs, human sounds mixed with something else that resonated in the darkness. A few more guys said they heard them too, but they still shrugged it off. I felt like I was talking to a wall. I tried to focus on my work, but the strange sounds gnawed at me. Each night, I wrestled with fear of what lay outside. I kept telling myself that everything had a reasonable explanation, that nothing was out of the ordinary. But at some point, I wondered, were we truly alone out there, or was something lurking beyond the shadows? The silence that followed left me uneasy, and I knew I had to confront whatever haunted those nights. Then, on the final night, I heard a voice. It was whispering, making my skin prickle. I couldn't make out the words, but I felt a chill run down my spine. Before I could move, I turned and saw something in the shadows. It was vague, just a dark shape against the darkness. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze. I didn't know what to do. The whispering continued, and I felt drawn to it, but deep down I was terrified. I didn't want to find out what it was. The next day was the worst yet. I barely slept, plagued by tiredness and unease. I went through the motions of my duties, but my mind was racing. I kept replaying that moment when I saw the shadow. My coworkers noticed something was off, but I just brushed them off. I wasn't about to admit I was scared. After lunch, I decided to take a walk around the perimeter of the base. I hoped it would clear my head. I took my time, studying the landscape. The dull brown of the mountains was monotonous, stretching endlessly into the horizon. Yet, as I walked, I felt a lingering sense of being watched, like eyes were on me, even from a distance. I shook the thought away, focusing instead on the sound of boots crunching in the gravel. That afternoon, I passed by a storage tent where we kept extra supplies. The wind was quiet, a rare moment of peace in the usually buzzing environment of the base. Then, I heard it again, the scraping noise, followed by that whisper. My heart dropped. It was coming from within the tent. I hesitated, considering my next move. Part of me wanted to dive in and confront whatever it was. The other part screamed for me to turn back and pretend I hadn't heard anything. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I approached the tent cautiously, my heart thudding in my chest. Peering inside, I saw nothing but shadows playing tricks on my eyes. The noise stopped. Silence enveloped me. I stepped in further, feeling the weight of the air pressing against my chest. Then, as if anticipating my arrival, it began again. The quiet, desperate whispering. I took another step, then froze. That's when I saw it. A small, ragged-looking doll lying in the corner. It looked out of place, caked in dust and grime, its button eyes staring blankly. I felt a chill. How did it get there? The noises faded, but the memory of the whispers lingered like a ghost in my mind. I bent down and picked up the doll, feeling its worn fabric under my fingers. It seemed like something lost, abandoned. But I remembered the child's cries I thought I heard in the night. What if this doll belonged to a child? Questions swirled in my head. Who had been here before me? Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the tent, forcing me to shiver. I looked around in alarm, the oppressive silence of the base swallowing all sound. Panic set in, and I dropped the doll as if it scalded me. I turned to leave when I heard it again, the whisper. This time, it was louder, more insistent. It felt like it was right behind me. I didn't look back. I bolted out of the tent, heart racing. I needed to tell someone. I had to make sense of this. But as I hurried back, I felt the whisper skimming my ears, and dread settled in my gut. What was I really dealing with? I didn't stop running until I reached my quarters. I slammed the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The whispers were still there, echoing in my mind. I couldn't shake that feeling of dread. Why was I so afraid? I had to tell someone, but who would believe me? After a few minutes, I forced myself to calm down. Thoughts of the doll filled my head. It felt like a warning, like it was meant to lead me to something. I grabbed my notebook and started scribbling down what I'd seen and heard. I needed to make sense of it all, even if it sounded absurd. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an alert from the base system about a scheduled drill. I stared at the screen, trying to push aside the turmoil in my head. The drill was just a few minutes away. I had no choice. I slipped my notebook into my pocket and took a deep breath. Making my way to the briefing room, I felt uneasy. The sound of my footsteps followed me, but it felt different now, like something was walking alongside me. I turned quickly, but saw no one. I shook it off as paranoia and continued. The room was filled with my fellow crew members, their expressions focused on the screens at the front. They were chatting about the week's tasks, but I couldn't concentrate. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in on me. I wanted to shout about the doll and the whispers, but the words wouldn't come. The drill started, and I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting. I watched as my team moved efficiently, but I felt isolated. The mention of security protocols triggered memories of the unwelcome whisper, and I caught myself glancing at the door, half expecting something to burst in. Midway through, the lights flickered. A few people chuckled nervously, but I felt a cold grip on my chest. The lights dimmed completely before the emergency buzz kicked in, sending a jolt of panic through the room. I turned to my teammate Jake, but he looked just as startled as I felt. Then came the sound again, a faint whisper, this time woven into the buzz of the alarms. I froze. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screens, but I heard it clearly. The whisper was repeating something I couldn't quite make out, like a name or a plea. My heart raced as I stepped away from the group. I needed to know what it was and where it was coming from. I slipped out of the room and headed towards the supply tent. The whispers grew louder as I approached, and I felt a pull. Something was calling me back. As I reached the tent, the wind whipped through the entrance, swirling the dust. The doll lay where I had dropped it, but now it seemed different, somehow alive. I stepped hesitantly inside, my pulse thrumming. And that's when I noticed a shadow moved behind the stacks of boxes. I couldn't breathe. Someone or something was inside. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity chained my feet to the ground. The shadow flickered again, and I felt an urge to investigate. Cautiously, I moved deeper into the tent. The chaos of the drill outside faded as the crackling whispers grew louder, tugging at my senses. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. There was no response, just the distant echo of alarms, the thrum of adrenaline in my veins. As I stepped around the boxes, my heart pounded in my chest. Then I saw it. A figure crouched low, the light barely illuminating its features. A woman? She looked frightened, her eyes wide and darting. "Please," she whispered, "you have to help me." I hesitated. Who was she? What was happening? "What do you need help with?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She glanced around, as if expecting someone or something to burst in. "They're coming for me," she said, her voice barely above a breath. "The whispers, they won't stop." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The same whispers I had heard. I took a step closer, and her panic twisted my stomach. "Who are they?" "Those who were here before. They're angry. You shouldn't have come back," she said urgently, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. "Wait, what do you mean? I didn't—" Then her gaze shifted past me, her body tensing. I spun around just as a shadow moved outside the tent, heavy footsteps approaching. My heart raced, and I looked back at her. "We have to get out." She nodded, but her expression was filled with terror. "You don't understand. It's not safe. The doll, it's theirs. They will come for it." A sudden jolt shot through me as the truth hit me like a cold wave. The doll wasn't just a toy. It was a conduit, an object of power for whatever was haunting this place. "Where did it come from?" I asked, backing away toward the entrance. "This wasn't in our inventory." She pressed her lips together, trembling. "They left it as a warning. It draws them." Before I could respond, the shadow outside shifted again, the bulk of a figure coming into view. I stayed rooted to the spot, watching as a man in a dark uniform, not one I recognized from our base, stepped closer. His expression was unreadable, cold like steel. Then everything went dark. The power cut out entirely, plunging the tent into silence. The buzzing alarms faded into the background, replaced by a suffocating stillness. Panic surged through me. Someone was here. I turned to grab the doll, but it was gone, vanished from its spot. "Where is it?" I shouted. The woman was gone too. I was alone. As I moved toward the entrance, I felt a breath against my neck. I froze, dread washing over me, and then I heard it, the whisper again, clearer now than ever. "Find it before they do." Before I could react, a sharp pain shot through my arm. I turned to see a darkened figure barreling toward me, and I stumbled backwards into the unknown. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground, and the whisper had turned into a chorus, echoing my name in warning. What had I stumbled into? What was waiting for me in the dark? The world spun around me, an assault of shadows and echoes. I blinked hard, trying to steady my breath, but the weight of dread pressed down. The whispers floated through the air like a haunting melody. Find it before they do. I pushed myself up onto my elbows, scanning the darkness. Panic bellowed inside me, demanding action. My arm throbbed where the figure had struck. I had to move, fast. "Where did you go?" I muttered, thinking of the woman. She had vanished, and so had the doll. A twinge of anger mixed with fear shot through me. This isn't happening, I told myself, but the silence of the tent told a different story. I got to my feet, my surroundings a maze of dark corners and towering piles of boxes. I strained to hear if anyone else was inside with me, but all I could discern was my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. Then I caught it, a faint rustling from somewhere to my left. With each step toward the sound, adrenaline coursed through me. I reached a stack of crates, the wood rough beneath my fingers. I felt a slippery mist, cold against my skin, and instinctively recoiled. My heart raced as I turned to see another shadow shift beyond the crates. "Who's there?" I called, though my voice trembled. I waited for a response. Nothing. Just the unsettling tension of something lurking. Determined, I rounded the crates, and that's when I saw it. A glimmer caught my eye, a small porcelain face peeking from behind one of the boxes, the doll's features pale and cracked. My breath caught. It was here. I crouched down, reaching for the doll. As my fingers brushed its cool surface, the whisper swelled, filling the air with panic. "Awake it," they hissed, echoing my thoughts. I pulled the doll into my arms, and an electric shock jolted through me. A sudden flare of light erupted above. The tense emergency lights flickered back to life, casting harsh shadows. The woman stood in the corner, her expression a mix of fear and hope. "Did you find it?" she asked. "Yes, but what happens now?" I shot back, holding the doll tightly. My mind raced with questions. "They will come," she whispered. "You have to listen. It knows the way." I scanned the tent, calculating my options. "Who are you talking about?" Before she could answer, the air thickened, and I sensed movement outside. The heavy thud of boots echoed, sharper now. I felt the color drain from my face. "What do we do?" "Hide," she urged, panic creeping back into her voice. But where could I conceal myself in this tent? The shadows seemed alive, creeping toward us. I spotted a space behind the crates to my right and pushed her toward it. "Go!" As she slipped away, the figure from before stepped into the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh light. All I could make out were ominous features and an unsettling calm in his stance. I gripped the doll tighter, feeling its coldness seep into my palm. The whispers crescendoed once more. "Awake it!" I had to act fast, but before I could decide my next move, the man's eyes locked onto mine, and an icy chill settled over me. What had I gotten myself into? I needed answers, and time was running out. I froze, caught in the man's gaze, as if the air had thickened around me. The whispers grew louder, but I could hardly concentrate. My heart raced, and I took a step back, knowing I had to do something. "Show yourself," he commanded, his voice deep and steady. I felt a rush of icy breath against my neck. If I didn't respond, he would pursue me, and that was a prospect I couldn't bear. There was a fleeting moment of indecision before I shouted, "What do you want?" It came out stronger than I felt, but desperation fuels courage, or so they say. His lips twitched, a smirk or a sneer, I couldn't tell. "You really shouldn't have done that," he said, slowly advancing. The shadows seemed to wrap around him, feeding off his confidence. I couldn't stay paralyzed. Without thinking, I darted behind the crates. The whispers amplified, urging me onward. "Awake it! Awake it!" Their insistence unnerved me, but there was no question I needed to know what the doll could do. From my hiding spot, I realized I could see both the woman and the man. She had crouched low, observing. I nodded at her, a silent agreement to stay hidden and wait. He lifted his head, drawing in the air as if savoring its essence. "Where is it?" he mused, glancing around. "I can sense it." A predatory gleam lit his demeanor, amplifying my panic. The doll pulsed in my hands as if responding to his presence. I had no idea what kind of power it might hold, but the energy it radiated felt alive. It transformed my fear into a flicker of resolve. "Now," I whispered, glancing at the woman. She nodded and moved slightly closer, steadying herself against the crate. I didn't know if she could hear the whispers, but it seemed they had a hold on both of us now. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded from deeper in the tent, making me jump. The man turned sharply, glaring into the dark expanse. "What was that?" His tone shifted to alarm, momentarily breaking his concentration. I seized the chance. "Now!" I hissed to the woman. We needed to act before he turned back. I withdrew the doll from my grip, focused, and the words came out. "Awake!" The doll shook violently in my hands, the porcelain inscribed with strange symbols. A blinding light erupted, and the whispers turned into a cacophony of screams. My instinct was to drop it, but I held on, feeling powerful forces swirl around us. The man spun back, eyes wide. "No!" he bellowed, but the light enveloped him. He staggered, arms flailing as the chaos erupted, throwing shadows against the tent walls. The woman and I stumbled back, shielding ourselves from the brilliance. When the light dimmed, I peeked. The man was gone. Only a lingering shadow remained, dissipating like smoke. "We have to move," the woman said, urgency returning to her voice. "This isn't over." As we prepared to escape, my heart sank. I had no idea what we had awakened, or what it would mean for us. One thing was clear. We had stirred something from the depths, and now it was coming for us. I hurriedly glanced around the cramped tent, the smell of damp earth mingling with something metallic, sending a shiver down my spine. "What did we just wake?" I whispered to the woman, our eyes locking in shared fear. Her voice trembled as she replied, "I don't know, but we can't stay here." The menace had not vanished, it had merely shifted, and I could feel it lurking, waiting for our next move. We crept toward the exit, each step careful and deliberate. My heart thudded in my chest, while the whispers ebbed and flowed like a restless tide. They seemed to call us back, teasing, beckoning. I shook my head, trying to focus. But then I heard it, a low growl, deep and reverberating. My stomach dropped. Whatever darkness had been roused wasn't finished with us yet. "Did you hear that?" I looked to the woman, searching her face for confirmation. Her eyes widened, and she nodded frantically. "We need to get out now!" We pushed through the flap and into the night air, only to find the camp in chaos. Torches flickered, casting distorted shadows that danced on the ground. Soldiers were shouting, their movements frantic. It was then that I noticed a strange mist seeping from the edges of the forest nearby, creeping into the camp like a malicious fog. "What is going on?" I asked, apprehension tightening in my throat. "We've awakened something," she said, scanning the perimeter. "Something they have tried to keep buried." Before I could respond, a scream echoed from the direction of the tents. My body froze as I recognized the voice. It was the voice of a soldier I had seen earlier, one who had joked about the legends surrounding this area. Now, that jesting had turned into something very real. "We can't just stand here," I yelled, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to find cover." We dashed toward a cluster of crates, hoping to remain unseen as the commotion swirled around us. As we crouched low, I caught sight of a shadowy figure slipping through the fog. It moved in a way that felt impossible, sliding along the ground like smoke. I clenched my teeth. Fear grew inside me like a coiled spring. Suddenly, the figure stopped near a group of soldiers. They didn't see it, unable to comprehend the threat lingering in the edges of the mist. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but the words died in my throat. Then I saw it. A flash of silver in the creature's hand, glinting under the moonlight. A blade? My heart raced. This couldn't be happening, but I couldn't linger. "We have to warn them," I said urgently to the woman, my resolve hardening even as fear gnawed my insides. "No," she hissed, grabbing my arm. "You'll only get us killed." Before I could argue, the screaming intensified, mixed with panicked shouts. I looked back, and the fog was swirling thicker, pulling the soldiers into its depths, their forms vanishing without a trace. "That's when I saw it," I whispered, horror mounting. A familiar face emerged from the mist, the soldier who had been joking earlier. His eyes were wide and pleading, a look that chilled me to the bone. But before I could react further, the mist writhed, and he vanished once more. "Run!" I shouted, yanking the woman with me, heart pounding, pulse racing. Whatever we had awakened was hungry, and we couldn't let it find us next. We sprinted through the chaos, dodging crates and flares, keeping our eyes on the shadows that licked at the edges of the camp. The screams around us became a warped symphony of terror,
but all I could focus on was the need to escape. "Where do we even go?" I asked breathlessly, my mind racing. The woman beside me kept glancing at the forest as if it held the answers we desperately sought. "Into the trees!" she shouted, pointing toward a narrow path that led into the cover of the woods. It wasn't exactly a safe haven, but it was better than being exposed in the frenzy of the camp. We darted toward the tree line, the mist now rolling across the ground like a living entity, hungry and searching. Twisted branches reached out, silhouettes in the dark. The trees loomed ahead, promising both refuge and more unknown dangers. I could feel the primal urge to flee coursing through me, an instinct telling me to find a way to survive. As we plunged
deeper into the forest, the sounds of chaos faded, swallowed by the quiet of nature, only to be replaced by that same low growl. It echoed around us, reverberating through the ground, making it feel as if the very earth shivered in anticipation. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, fear creeping back in. "It's getting closer," she replied, panic tightening her voice. We picked up our pace, weaving between the trees, the underbrush cracking beneath our hurried steps. Suddenly, we found ourselves in a small clearing. There was a strange stillness here, a sharp contrast to the terror we had left behind. The moonlight streamed through the branches, creating patches of light that felt almost magical, until I spotted something horrifying. In the center of the clearing lay an old weathered altar, surrounded by symbols etched into the ground. My breath caught as I recognized the markings from the legends the soldiers had so carelessly scoffed at. This was a place of rituals, of dark things once feared. "What is this?" I murmured, stepping closer. "I don't know," the woman said, peering over my shoulder. "But we shouldn't be here." Before I could ask why, a chilling sound broke through the silence. A voice, almost human, echoing my name. It was soft but insistent, curling through the trees like smoke. My heart raced as recognition clawed at my mind. "Did you hear that?" I asked, eyes wide. "Yes," she replied, fear evident in her gaze. "Who's calling you?" I swallowed hard, a chill running down my spine as I shook my head, unsure how I could even begin to answer that question. The moment hung heavy between us, wrapped in uncertainty. "There's no time," I finally said, breaking the trance. "We have to keep moving." But as we turned to leave, the fog slithered into the clearing, enveloping everything in its grasp. The growl returned, this time joined by deep, guttural laughter, an unmistakable promise of violence. "You won't escape," it seemed to say. In that instant, everything shifted. The ground trembled, and we stumbled backward, crashing against the altar. I heard the whispers again, louder, swirling around us, a menacing chant that threatened to rip apart the fabric of my sanity. And then the mist parted. I realized something was approaching, something far worse than we had imagined, something powerful and ancient, awakened by our presence. "Stay close," I urged, our backs against the stones. "Whatever it is, we face it together." But deep down, I felt the cold grip of dread. As the shadows closed in, I knew this was far from over. The shadows thickened in the clearing, and the air became heavy, pressing down on us like a weight that threatened to crush my resolve. The growling escalated, a low rumble that made my bones vibrate.
I could feel the woman's presence beside me, her fear a palpable thing, as we huddled against the altar. Then, just as I thought I could no longer bear the tension, a figure emerged.
From the mist, it moved with an otherworldly grace, an elongated silhouette that flickered like a flame. My stomach twisted at the sight, and I instinctively took a step back, pulling the woman with me. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I managed, my throat dry, "but we can't stay here." The figure stepped into the moonlight, revealing features that were both horrifying and mesmerizing. A face that was almost human, but twisted by something darker. A cruel smile that spoke of knowledge both dreadful and ancient. It opened its mouth, and the voice that escaped was a chorus from the depths of hell. "Don't you remember me?" it taunted, the sound wrapping around me like barbed wire. I took a quick breath, the air caught in my chest. I wanted to answer, to cry out, but no words came. Memories slipped through my mind like water through fingers. Familiar faces, echoes of laughter now lost to nightmares. "Your past calls to you." The creature's smile widened, showing teeth too sharp for comfort. "You've run, but you cannot hide." Behind it, the trees shuddered, their leaves whispering warnings I couldn't comprehend. The growl shifted to a hum, vibrating through the ground, in sync with the frantic beat of my heart. "We should go, now!" I finally screamed, dragging the woman's arm, willing her to follow me. But she hesitated, her wide eyes locked on the apparition. "What if it knows something?" she pleaded. "About what? Us?" I snapped back, fear bubbling to the surface. "That thing is going to hurt us." No longer bound by gravity, the creature drifted closer, its form flickering. Each step it took sent ripples through the mist, and I felt my grip on reality slip. There was no reasoning with it, no bargain to strike. We had stumbled into something far bigger than ourselves. With resolve, I yanked her hand and dashed out of the clearing, into the grasp of the trees, away from the altar. My pulse raced as branches clawed at us, the mist swirling in pursuit. Every instinct screamed for us to run, but the voice still echoed in my mind, lingering like an unwelcome guest. "What if it's right?" the woman gasped as we plunged further into the depths of the forest. I didn't have a reply. Panic was a tide threatening to drown us, but thoughts of past mistakes wrapped around my mind. They gnawed at my conscience, whispering doubts I loathed to confront. Then everything changed. Just ahead, I saw a faint glow breaking through the darkness, a beacon of hope or another trap laid in wait. My heart pounded as I felt an unseen force at my back, urging me forward. "Over there!" I shouted, pointing to the light. "We need to reach it." But before we could take another step, the fog coiled tighter around us, solidifying into shapes I couldn't comprehend. I finally turned to face the source of the growl, knowing its promise.
Of violence wasn't just a whisper anymore. "Run!" I yelled, and we sprinted forward, into the unknown, the mist swallowing us whole. I don't remember how long we ran through the forest, the howls and whispers chasing us with relentless abandon. Time had warped as we pushed through the tangled underbrush, every step taking us deeper into a creeping darkness that dragged at our heels. My lungs felt like fire, and I fought to keep my panic from clawing its way to the surface. Over there, I spotted a flickering light between the trees, a fragile glimmer that felt impossibly inviting amidst the menace surrounding us. "We have to reach it." The woman looked at me, uncertainty clouding her eyes. "What if it's a trap?" I didn't have the luxury of doubts. The growling was closer now, an echo of hunger that reverberated through the trees. I grasped her hand and pulled her toward the light. We have to take the chance. We barreled through the trees, branches snatching at our clothes, the mist thickening behind us. The rumbling had transformed into a low, threatening chant, filling my head with despair. Just as I feared we would be swallowed whole, we burst into a small clearing bathed in moonlight, and the source of the glow became clear. It was an ancient well, stones worn smooth by time, shimmering softly, as if alive. Without thinking, I let go of her hand, rushing to the edge of the well. "Maybe it can save us," I called back. A flicker of hope surged alongside my dread. "Maybe it can drown whatever is hunting us." I leaned over the edge, straining to see within the depths. It felt like a gaping mouth ready to swallow me whole. The whispers intensified, swirling around us, warning me, coaxing me. It sounded like my name. "Alex!" The woman's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I turned to see her hesitating, glancing back toward the trees, eyes wide with fear. "Don't! Come here!" I shouted, but I wasn't sure of the safety or what I hoped to accomplish. My instincts battled against an irrational urge to leap into the darkness, perhaps searching for answers, perhaps fleeing the reality behind me. Then I noticed movement, a shadow darting among the trees, the creature's form emerging from the fog. "It's coming!" I yelled, fear gripping my throat. "Jump in, I'll follow." "Are you crazy?" she cried, panic flaring in her voice. "We have to keep running." But the growl reverberated through my core, shaking my resolve. "This is our only chance." I turned back to the well. "Please," I urged her, my heart pounding. Time was running out. The shadow grew larger and more defined, grinning menacingly as it approached. I felt the weight of its gaze, something primal, something dreadful tugging at my insides. "Now!" She hesitated a moment longer, then dashed forward, eyes locked on mine. The moment she reached the edge, I took her hand again, and at the edge of
The well, we both jumped. The darkness engulfed us, the air rushing past, an uncertain end beneath us. When we hit the water, it was cold, swallowing us whole. I thrashed, instincts igniting as I fought to find the surface. With a gasp, I broke through, dragging in air. The woman followed closely, her expression a mix of confusion and fear. We clung to the edge of the well, water lapping at our faces. The sounds from the world above faded, leaving us in a dim isolation that felt strangely soothing yet unsettling. "Is it gone?" she gasped, glancing up into the darkness above us. As our breath steadied, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been pursuing us was still near, lurking just beyond the reach of light. "Maybe," I whispered, but my doubts lingered. Would it follow us down here? My past loomed behind me like a shadow I couldn't escape, memories clawing at my mind. A wave of uncertainty hit me. It was now or never. "Do we stay here?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure. "I don't know if we can get out," I said, "but we have to try." Before we could decide further, the surface of the water rippled violently, eyes appearing around the edge of the well. I sucked in my breath at the sight of a hand reaching down, a familiar figure emerging from the mist. "Alex!" The voice was soft but insistent, threadbare with familiarity. It was my sister, echoing my past, a distant specter I had tried to forget. "What?" I called, incredulity seeping into my voice. How could it be her? How could I lose myself to this? "Are you real?" She smiled, yet exhaustion seeped into her eyes. "You've been found, Alex." What does that even mean? The question burst forth, laden with confusion and a hint of anger. What's happening to us? "We're a part of it now," she said softly, the shadows flickering closer. The whispers, "It's time to wake." I turned away from her, the urgency of our situation pressing against me. At the edge of consciousness, reality slipped, leaving me wrestling between truth and deceit.
Whatever she was offering felt elusively unsettling, and the darkness wove tighter around us. "I can't," I whispered. Then I felt it, a sharp tug at my heart, a connection that resonated with the whispers. "Do you remember?" she beckoned, the world around us throbbing with energy. The water churned as I flailed back, despair clawing into my chest. I looked back at the woman, her face not just fear, but also hope, a plea woven through her expression. "What if we give it another chance?" I said quietly, swimming towards her as I felt the weight of choice pressing down upon me. "Don't we owe it that?" The plea hung in the air like a question unending. I still think about that night sometimes. Did we find salvation, or had I opened up some hidden door to an abyss?
No. The shadows may still linger, watching, waiting. Perhaps I hadn't escaped after all. And as I reflect on it, I can't help but wonder if I ever truly understood what I was running from.